Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May edition of the Amherst Planning Board. Let me go over a couple of announcements. First of all, we are the Planning Board. We are volunteers appointed by the Town Board. We make final decisions on site plans and subdivisions. When it comes to rezonings or amendments to the comprehensive plan, we are advisory only. In other words, the Town Board, who is elected, will make the final decision either way. They receive our recommendations and then they act on that. So there's a couple things, there's a couple things on the item that are exactly that. They're recommendations. They're not the final word. You're going to want to go to the town board meeting when it's scheduled to be heard. Now, the procedures. The petitioner on each matter is going to present to the board on each agenda item. The board will ask questions and converse with the petitioner. And then I will ask if anyone from the public has any comments or questions on the agenda. Any questions or concerns you might have, please address them our way, and then we'll make sure that the petitioner addresses those afterwards. There is a laser pointer attached to the podium up there. Please use it and use it on the screen to my right, your left, if you're going to do that. I would also ask to make sure that everyone does their best to speak into the microphones. We've had some issues with people watching the online version of this who complain that they can't hear either us or someone in the audience. So please make sure you use the microphone. We don't have any unfinished business items today, but when we do, there's no presentation on that. The petitioner who speaks on behalf of any agenda item has up to 15 minutes to speak. The first person who comments from the general public on any agenda item will be deemed the neighborhood resident spokesperson. That person gets 15 minutes as well. So if you're the spokesperson on behalf of a group, make sure you step up first so you get your 15 minutes. Any other individual speakers thereafter are limited to 3 minutes, and we do have someone behind me timing you on that. In the event that we have to evacuate the building for any reason, just please go out there and to your right. Don't come up here and try to wind your way through back here. And let's do a roll call now, because we should have done that earlier.
Shabeel.
Here.
Davis. Here. Hill. Khan.
Here.
O'Rourke.
Here.
Penberthy. Here. Raphael.
Present.
Thank you. Okay, let's start off with item number 1, 4780 Sheridan Drive. Mr. Hopkins.
Good evening, members of the Planning Board. John Hopkins on behalf of the applicant, 4780 Sheridan Drive, LLC. Do you have control of the slides, Amy? Or Dan? Go to the next slide. So I just want to reacclimate everyone on this project. This is what was formerly known as 4774, 4780 Sheridan Drive. I call it the former Gleason's project. You've actually previously reviewed this project several times, in fact. And the only reason we're back this evening is we're trying to create lots for the units that'll be for sale. And it's important to note these are units for sale. Go to the next slide. Actually, you can skip over right to my slides. There we go. So this is what we're proposing. We have 22 residential units, which consists of 11 two-unit townhome buildings, again for sale. So we're proposing to create one lot for each of the units, and then the balance of the site will be common area. We will be utilizing the condominium form of ownership. The infrastructure on the site will be private. Next slide. Just to reacclimate everyone where the site is, obviously you can see between Fleetwood Terrace to the west and Jordan Road to the east, directly across from the Park Country Club. Next slide. Just to show you a little closer. I do want to note that as part of the cleanup pursuant to the DEC Brownfield Cleanup Program, that has already begun. The structures have been demolished, the vegetation has been removed, and that required work to clean up this site per our program per our participation in the program is underway. Next slide. The site itself is 5.03 acres in size. It has now been merged into one site with an address of 4780 Sheridan Drive. Next slide. That's the preliminary plat. I do want to note that around the perimeter of the site, to the west, to the north, and to the east, where we border single-family homes, we are showing high-impact screening consisting of a 6-foot fence with extensive landscaping. Units are designed for living on the first floor only. They're approximately 1,780 square feet in size. We need these type of units, especially for sale in the town of Amherst, and the sales price is approximately $500,000 per unit. Next slide. In terms of one of the key aspects of this project during the extensive review process that began a couple of years ago was cleanup of the site pursuant to the Brownfield Cleanup Program. I'm not going to get into great detail, but from an environmental perspective, which is what you're looking at this evening, that's obviously a good thing. The site is contaminated because of its former use as Gleason's Nursery. We have been accepted into the Brownfield Cleanup Program. We have agreed to clean this up to the highest standard, residential standard, which means after this is done, the testing is completed by the DEC as well as a third-party consultant. There will be no contamination left on this site. When we sell these units to individual homeowners, there's not a disclosure. It is literally certified not only by us, but by the DEC as being completely cleaned up. Next slide. These are the elevations that have been developed by James Fahey of Rochester, New York. You can see, we think these buildings look quite nice. Next slide. These are just the elevation plans. These are the front elevation, right elevation, and next is the rear elevation and the left side elevation. It is important to note, with the exception of those units that are on the northern border of the site, there is an option for second floor space. Meaning if you want to have an exercise room, a guest room, a study, an office, you will have that option. We agreed to a condition that on the northern portion of the site, where it's closest to the adjacent neighbors, you do not have that option. So that only presents itself elsewhere on the site. Next slide. Floor plan. Next slide. Floor plan again. Next slide. This is a copy of the actual landscape plan that you previously took a look at and approved. You can see very, very extensive landscaping throughout the project site, and emphasis again along the perimeter where it's contiguous to existing single-family homes. Based on the discussion with this board and the town board previously, we've actually gone beyond the high-impact screening requirement along the north. We're staggering trees to provide a very, very dense buffer on that portion of the site. We're also showing sidewalk connection out to Sheridan Drive, and there are currently sidewalks on Sheridan Drive, and we'll extend those across the driveway connection. This project has been reviewed and approved by DOT. All we need to do is, once we have our approvals, select a site contractor, and we can pull that permit. Next slide. This is the actual planting schedule, and as you can see, we literally are planting 250 trees, 215 shrubs, 77 ornamental grasses. The planning department asked for some detail regarding the fencing, so there's a fencing detail. We're going to work that out as a result of additional discussions with the neighbors. Ultimately, they've indicated they prefer to see a vinyl fence. We're not going to do what I would call a generic vinyl fence. We'll do something that's not white and a highly decorative finish, meaning this will be a textured finish with the exterior being the nice side. Next slide. I'm not going to go into the detail of the Brownfield Cleanup Program again, but to emphasize that we are cleaning this up to the highest standard, which is a Track 1 unrestricted residential cleanup. Again, we will get certification from the DEC that all the contamination on this site has been completely remediated. Next slide. We can skip the next two. Then next. We did receive several variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals. The only reason those variances were needed is because this is not what I would call a typical subdivision, because we have attached units. As a result of the fact that we have attached units, for example, our side yard setbacks are 0 feet. Our rear yard setbacks are less than they would be because we have the common area. Same for our front yard setbacks. But basically, again, it's the exact same physical layout that you've reviewed and previously approved. I do want to note it does comply with Appendix D of the Fire Code in terms of the roadway width. And then we do have that T turnaround as required by Appendix D of the Fire Code on the eastern portion of the site. Next slide. As I indicated in the introductory comments, the sole purpose of this evening's hearing is not the request for preliminary plat. It's the environmental review pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. You previously did issue a negative declaration during your meeting last June on the identical layout. We have obtained an updated wetland investigation from Scott Livingston of Earth Dimensions, dated December 4th of last year, confirming there are no jurisdictional wetlands. subject to the DEC or the Army Corps of Engineers on the site. And then next slide, we also do have a no impact letter issued by the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, dated December 14th of 2018, confirming there are no historical, cultural, or archaeological resources on the site. So with all that being said, all we're asking you to do this evening is issue a negative declaration, and we believe we'll be back in a position to be here next month, and hopefully we'll be in a position to issue preliminary plat approval. In the meantime, we'll be continuing to proceed with the cleanup of the site, and the goal will be to break ground on the actual construction of these for sale units in spring of 2026. If there's any questions, I would welcome the opportunity to address them.
Thank you. Mr. O'Rourke. Mr. Davis. Fred.
Not necessarily subject to the seeker review, but there's gonna be at least one continuous sidewalk throughout the parcel.
Yes. And that'll be on the eastern side of the driveway.
Joe.
No questions.
Carrie.
No questions.
Okay, is there anyone from the general public with any comments or concerns? Step right up, come on.
Do you need my name and address?
Please.
Alicia Schreier, 79 Tristan Lane. So last year when we were talking about this plan, we had I'm here about the number of trees. We had the landscaping plan, and we did note that there were going to be 49 large trees at that time. But the picture was missing 7 of the large trees. So we did have a verbal, well, we're going to put in what's in the chart, not on the picture. But now, we are now, at this point, missing 10 large trees instead of just the 7. So Rob Savarino did tell me he was going to send me an updated chart, with the trees, the big trees. And he didn't, and I called his office like 3 or 4 times trying to get the chart, but I never got an answer. I never got the chart, etc. So this is my very first opportunity to talk to people about little trees versus big trees. Okay, some huge trees have been taken down. It affects the way the neighborhood looks now. And so I am here to appeal to you to say, could we please have the 10 large trees, the 49 large trees altogether, now missing 10, as opposed to smaller trees?
Anybody else? Come on up, sir.
My name's Dan Gagliardo. 25 Steinway Court.
Thank you.
I think it might be a really good idea. I'm here representing the residents. Could you please explain to them a negative declaration and exactly the process, what it means? I think that most people would understand that, so understand what's going to happen, just so they realize that when you do make that recommendation, what that means and what the next step would be. I think would be very helpful to the residents.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, if you want to address the concerns, Mr. Hopkins.
Sure. In terms of the landscaping, that comment was raised previously. I want to agree with that on the record. Let us take a look at that. If we are indeed missing 10 large trees from the plan, we'll add those back in. When we come here next month, you'll see that. In terms of the process, I'll do my best to answer it. What we're asking for is what's known as a determination of significance. And we're specifically asking you to make the same determination you made, the identical determination you made last June, which is that this project will not result in any potentially significant adverse environmental impacts. If you make that determination pursuant to New York State town law, the preliminary plat application is deemed complete, and then you will separately be required to hold an additional public hearing in connection with that request for a preliminary plat, and then we'll also be required to obtain a whole host of approvals and permits from involved agencies, the health department, the water authority, the DEC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're well into this process, but there is at least one more mandatory public hearing.
And Mr. Hopkins, you would agree that such as the requirement that you're apparently agreeing to do, that the 10 extra trees, that'd be during the next step, right?
Yeah, we would simply add that to the landscape plan before we come back next month.
Okay,
And I do again want to say that comment has been voiced before.
thank Ma'am, does that answer your question?
And we'll get you the updated plan.
Appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Close the hearing. Okay, item number 2, 1789 Dodge Road, also strictly a secret determination. Mr. Hopkins.
Good evening once again. Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant, Joe Rubino. Also with me this evening is Mr. Rubino and Dan LaPetra, the project engineer from Carmina Wood Design. As you'll recall, you did hold a public hearing on this matter during your April meeting. We're asking you to consider this evening issuing a negative declaration pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act in connection with the pending request for preliminary plat approval for the property located at 1789 Dodge Road. We made a very lengthy presentation last month addressing a wide assortment of identified environmental concerns. For purposes of this evening's meeting, I'm going to focus on what's new. And then again, if there's any questions about what we've previously presented, we can come back to those. So if you want to scan ahead, Dan, considerable number of slides. Keep going, keep going, going. Keep going. Okay, we can go there. Go back to, Dan, if you can. Okay, so this is the current preliminary plat. What we're showing on this site is 14 lots for single-family homes as a result of a condition imposed by the town board on July 22nd of last year in connection with its rezoning of the site from SA, suburban agriculture, to R3, residential district 3. The town board imposed a series of conditions, perhaps most importantly of which was providing 2.7 acres of permanent open space, which we are showing in the back, along the frontage, and then also along the edges. So basically, all 4 sides of the site will have permanent open space. We have submitted fully engineered plans that demonstrate compliance with the stringent stormwater quality and quantity standards. There was previously a request to add a school children pickup and drop-off area along Dodge Road. So we've shown that because we know school buses will not travel down public or private cul-de-sacs in that school district. We're minimizing the wetland impacts all the way down to 0.134 acres of the regulated 100-foot adjacent area. Our current layout replaced what we previously had, which was a T turnaround with a cul-de-sac that does comply with Appendix D of the Fire Code. We will be granting the requested drainage easement along the back for the existing ditch to the town of Amherst. We are showing a partially paved stub street to the property to the south. That reflects input received from the highway department. And then we are also planting some evergreen trees along the edge of that so that it will be clear that if and when that roadway connection goes in the future, that is a right-of-way. Next slide. Do want to note that all aspects of these lots as currently configured do comply with the wide assortment of standards set forth for single-family homes on individual lots in the R3 zoning district, including front yard, rear yard, side yard, lot area, et cetera, et cetera. So we are not seeking any variances in connection with this layout, and Dan and his team at Carmina Wood Design deserve a lot of credit because they've made an effort to avoid variances. Next slide. It's a sketch plan, and again, one of the requirements we also agreed to as part of this process, so keep in mind this goes back all the way to 2019, is we are installing a fence 250 feet here along the north, 320 feet along the south. The homes on both those adjacent lots are relatively close to the Dodge Road frontage, so that will provide screening for those homes along those areas. Next slide. Next slide. This is a marked up version of the plan we received in connection with the previous approval for sketch plan. And again, I just want to emphasize at that point in time, we had one additional lot. We also had a T turnaround versus a cul-de-sac. During that review process, the town board amended the subdivision regulations. That occurred December of last year, and we did make changes. We made changes to reflect those amendments. Next slide. Showing the green space. Next slide. Next slide. So just because, again, the question came up in connection with the previous project, where are we at in year 6 on this project? On April 17th of last month, you held your first public hearing in connection with the seeker review. We're back for a continuation. We do believe, based on the updated information we've submitted, that you are in a position to issue a seeker determination. If and when that occurs, we'll be coming back in front of you hopefully next month in connection with the pending request for preliminary plat approval. And we'll need final plat approval, a wide assortment of approvals from involved and interested agencies, et cetera, et cetera. So while it seems crazy from my perspective, we're only about halfway through the number of steps, but we're hoping it won't be 6 additional years. Next slide. So seeker, this is why we're here this evening. We do believe at this point in time, we've provided very extensive documentation that allows you to fulfill your substantive requirements, which are 1, identify the relevant areas of environmental concern, 2, ensure yourself that you've taken a hard look at those, and then finally, issuing a seeker determination with the assistance of the planning department, supported by a reasoned elaboration. It is important to note that to date, we have not received any comments from involved or interested agencies suggesting that this project will result in any potentially significant adverse environmental impacts. Next slide. Next slide. Wetland impacts, again, I already pointed out that the only wetland impact, it's not to the wetland, it's the adjacent area, is this very, very small area back here. Next slide. So, updated information. We were previously asked to submit a landscaping plan for the Dodge Road frontage. We retained the services of Bob Walter, the town's former landscape architect. He met with Mr. Rubino and Jeff Sikowski, the town's current landscape architect, on site a couple of weeks ago, and this is the plan that they came up with. Basically, there's a large number of evergreen trees along that frontage, which we've seen before, that are mature. We will be leaving those, and we'll be supplementing them with 14 additional trees and 30 shrubs, the precise details shown on this plan. You're not approving this plan this evening, but hopefully at your meeting next month, you'll be in a position to do so. Next slide. The second issue that came up was headlights. Given that we have a roadway entering onto Dodge Road, would there be any adverse impacts associated with vehicles exiting the site during nighttime hours? Dan and his team at Carmina Wood Design prepared this road profile plan. And what it did show is, from a theoretical perspective, there could be some lighting impacts on those homes. I do want to note for the record, we do not consider that to be a potentially significant adverse environmental impact. It's an unavoidable adverse environmental impact, and obviously every single roadway, to some degree in the town of Amherst, comes out opposite something else. In many instances, those are existing single-family homes. However, but nonetheless, if you go to the next slide, Mr. Rubino did submit a letter on May 2nd to the 2 property owners on the opposite side of Dodge Road in that area, and that's at 1790 and 1800. I have the addresses there wrong, and indicated a willingness to plant 3 evergreen trees on both these properties. Once those residents answer, if that is indeed the case, we'll update our landscaping plan to include that as well. So we think we've addressed that impact. Next slide. We also have received, subsequent to your meeting in April, we've submitted updated downstream sanitary sewer capacity analysis, and on May 8th, Vishali Rebert-Holt from the engineering department deemed it satisfied, being able to be submitted to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. This does provide the necessary assurance that during wet weather conditions, there will be adequate downstream sanitary sewer capacity. We will also be required to comply with the town's I&I requirements, which means we basically cut a check for off-site sanitary sewer improvements. Next slide. This is just a summary of the hard look at the environmental impacts, again, over a very, very lengthy process. There's no record of contamination on the site. None of the involved or interested agencies have expressed concerns about potentially significant adverse environmental impacts. It is consistent with the underlying R3 zoning. We did already eliminate a lot since presenting this to the town board, most recently on July 22nd of last year. And in summary, we think it's very clear and that there's some substantive documentation that supports our position that the issuance of a negative declaration is both appropriate and justified. So with all that being said, and given the lengthy history of this project, that's what we're asking for this evening, the issuance of a negative declaration. And if there are any questions specifically about the new information we provided since your April meeting, either myself, Joe, or Dan would welcome the opportunity to address them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Rourke, any questions?
No questions on the seeker.
Mr. Davis?
The only question I have is for the open space. Is there an HOA or something? Who's going to take care of that
Yeah,
project?
so we will be forming an HOA. The HOA will be responsible for the ownership of the permanent open space along the Dodge Road frontage. and on the back of the site, the 20-foot area, generally speaking, along the backs of the lots, those will be owned by the homeowners, but subject to a declaration of restrictions. So it's a hybrid approach.
Anything else? Good. Brittany?
Okay, so you just indicated Carmina Woods did indicate that there will be some light pollution as a
That-
result of this?
That they're potentially, when a car is exiting the site, there could be some lighting spillover onto homes on the two homes on the opposite side of the street.
So where do we have before us that Mr. Rubino's letter of 3 trees is going to satisfy the light pollution issue?
Well, again, I want to make it clear. First of all, we disagree. That's not a potentially significant adverse environmental impact. It's simply not. But nonetheless, in the spirit of cooperation, we've expressed a willingness to plant those trees. And of course, it will reduce lighting impacts. Are we making any statement that there'll never be any lighting that shines onto someone else's property across the street? No, and no one could make that assurance.
Okay, so we don't have anything before us that says the 3 trees being suggested will combat the suggested light?
Well, we know it'll reduce it, but I can't guarantee it will eliminate it.
And I know before when we had these public hearings, the mention of wildlife on this particular parcel, has that at all been analyzed by your applicant?
Well, it's been analyzed by the DEC, and there is no evidence of there being anything that's endangered, listed, special concern, et cetera, on this project site. There's just typical suburban species. And keep in mind, 2.7 acres of the site, again, will be retained as green space.
Is that some information you were provided that's just not in our packet? Because all I saw about the DEC comments were related to wetlands.
Well, you have a DEC lead agency concurrence letter, and if they have concern about that impact, they raise it. They screen it with their database.
Those are the only questions I have right now.
Thank you. Joe? No questions. Carrie?
No questions.
Okay. Do we have anybody from the general public?
William Pitts, 1815 Dodge Road, adjacent landowner. I have many questions, but I have to be careful because I guess we're only supposed to talk about the seeker. And you all know all this language. We don't. We're just stupid people. I want to know about the 100-year flood plan. Building houses within 100 feet of it. I couldn't put up a garage within 100 feet of it. How can you build houses? That's a concern. We're talking about the environment. We're going to tear down a house that's approximately 100 years old, and I'm sure you all know about asbestos. Has there been any studies done on this house to have asbestos in it? You know, it raises a severe health concern for, you know, us unimportant residents that really haven't been listened to. And yes, I'm being a little derogatory because I'm very upset about this again. Yeah, they sent a letter to Sandy and another neighbor in their fashion within 3 days, but you cannot tell me that you got headlights coming out a road. If I turn this way or I turn this way, they're going to shine on the houses. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And again, why do we, the established residents that have lived there for generations, have to accommodate the new? How about the new accommodate the old? Again, we go back to this doesn't fit our neighborhood. Just because it was allowed down the street doesn't mean that we need to keep making the same mistakes. It seems like our concerns are not really listened to. We've asked CULPA, we've asked some people, we send emails, and we get crickets. It's like we're all dismissed, and it's just getting very old. The board had you guys had said about the 14 houses, you made a condition that it was supposed to go down to 13 houses. And builder said no. Nope, we're going to do what we want. So aren't the conditions then just a joke? We talk about this fence that they're gonna put up. Not once have I been contacted. And I'm the adjacent landowner, one of two. This 20-foot buffer that we have, I want to get this on the record, that this fence should be at the end of the people's property, and the 20-foot buffer should be from the fence to my property line. That's a buffer for me. Otherwise, it's not a buffer. And it shouldn't just be 150 feet or 250 feet on my side of the property. It should be the full length. I know some of my neighbors on the other side of Dodge have made concerns that they have a fence up in their backyards from the development that was put back there. And homeowners take their yard waste, their dog crap, throw it over the fence. So here again, put it in their buffer. Let them clean up the mess. It shouldn't be my responsibility to clean up somebody else's mess, because I will send it back in not a very nice way. So still go back to, nobody liked the way this was done. So it doesn't fit the neighborhood. Why? I had to go once before the town board to get a variance because I wanted to build a garage. You notice it's a common theme with me. I love garages. And I was told that, if people had concerns or complaints or issues, that I may not be able to have my garage. Well, the neighborhood has concerns over this whole development. We don't want it. We still say he will make his money, not as much. Divide that property into R3 lots, the width of Dodge Road. R3 is 65-foot minimum frontages. Why can't we put 6 houses in, which will then keep the character of our neighborhood intact as best that it can? I mean, I don't understand. We got, the wetlands is a joke. That line gets moved whenever the wind blows. This floodplain, or flood plan, what about that? I haven't seen anything mentioned about it, and I know that it's there. Because again, I was told by the Amherst building department that I can't build within 100 feet of it. And isn't it awful convenient that it goes halfway through my property? Which will then impact some of these homes. So again, why can we do this? What is it going to do to the water table? Because now you're going to raise these houses up because of the road. And now where's that excess water going to go? I got a fairly good idea, probably into my basement. Years ago, the town built or allowed building to be done. I mean, I'm talking 40 years ago at someplace in Amherst, and it changed the water table. We used to have a sump pump in our basement, in my basement, and it would run. And every now and then we'd get some excess water in the basement. My neighbor had none. He never had it. They did something in the town by putting in a development somewhere, and it changed that table. Our sump pump went dry. He had to install 2 of them, and it was at his expense. Well, when this happens and it now affects my house, who's going to pay for it? Shouldn't be me. So there's things that we don't know what's going to happen until it happens. And then how do we address it then? Or is it just too late? And to me, that just means forget you, long residents. So I guess that's all I got to say. I mean, I got a lot more to say, but if we're just talking about environment, what about asbestos? What about this? I mean, we're going to tear down a 100-year-old house for no good reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Hi, Cheryl Anastasia, 1860 Dodge Road. I'm just wondering, when you guys approve all of this, do you ever drive around and see what it really looks like? I have to tell you, Essex, it is so ugly. It is so ugly. They're all the same. They're all lined up the same. They're just different colors. They're truly ugly. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak? Go ahead, ma'am.
Nancy Fender, 101 Main Street. I have several questions. First, let me make a statement. I believe this proposal started on lies. We've been lied to all the way through, and obviously it's going to end in lies. Half of his paperwork isn't filled out, and parts of it that are not even proper if you know the area. As far as environmental impact on wildlife, what is regular neighborhood wildlife? I've seen 2 different families with baby deer over there. So where are they going to go, as Billy said? I've never once in this whole thing in 4 years heard how you, the planning board, 4 of you members were still on it, 3 of which denied it to begin with because it's not in harmony with the neighborhood. And even subdivision laws say that subdivision should be in harmony with the surrounding area. He's betting on Casey Road. Casey Road's a whole different place. Brenridge is behind the houses on Dodge Road, so what's it got to do with this one? Essex Homes, he got going and got done. Why? Because only within 600 feet are you informed of what's going on in the town. And that's wrong. I really think it's wrong. And I pray for everyone that this gets settled and it gets settled peacefully. I do have an article coming out in the Buffalo News. Not sure the exact date because they didn't inform me of that, but I suggest you watch for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing that? Okay, Mr. Hopkins, if you could respond to the questions and comments?
Yeah, I'll do my best. First of all, I want to object to the suggestion that paperwork's not filled out correctly, neighbors have been lied to, we have not listened. That all defies logic in the record of this entire project. As you know, again, we have voluntarily reduced the density. We have voluntarily provided permanent open space. No one else does that. Mr. Rubino's agreed to plant trees on the opposite side of the site. We've made every effort to minimize wetland impacts. We're installing fencing that's not required by code. So while the neighbors may not agree with the project, I think it's a little bit disingenuous to make those unsubstantiated claims. However, with all that being said, the questions that or comments they've made, I can't address. Number one, asbestos. Prior to that house being removed, an asbestos test has to be done by a licensed contractor. And if asbestos is there, it has to be remediated under the auspices of the building department. Number two, in terms of project layout, density, 15 homes versus 14 homes versus 13 homes. We're not saying that we get to do whatever we want. We're doing this based on the code. And as I indicated, this site has been designed so it does comply with every specific criteria for single family homes in the R3 zoning district. In terms of floodplain impacts, we are not building any homes whatsoever in the floodplain. There is no requirement that you stay 100 feet away from the floodplain. However, there is a requirement you stay 100 feet away from DEC wetlands. We're doing that with an exception of a very, very minor wetland impact. So again, the speculation and conjecture that we're illegally filling wetlands, we're ignoring the law, we're doing whatever we want, it's simply not true. All the extensive environmental documentation is in the record. It's been available for anyone to review. And again, I think quite conclusively, we've demonstrated this project will not result in any potentially significant adverse environmental impacts. And as such, we're asking that you issue a negative declaration so we can finally proceed to the next step, which is an additional public hearing on preliminary plat.
And thank you, Mr. Hopkins. And once again, I do want to note this is a seeker hearing. I understand that, you know, that some of this stuff, you know, we've learned it. We've been doing this every month, but this is a seeker hearing. It's environmental impact. There will be a preliminary plat hearing in the very near future, I predict, so that It's not the end of the story today, whatever happens, just so everybody understands. Thank you, Mr. Hopkins.
You're welcome.
All right, item number 3, South Linden Street. Mr. Palumbo? Oh, yeah. Closed, no, hearing number 2 is closed.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Palumbo from the law firm of Block Longo, here today to discuss the proposed rezoning of the South Linden property. You're all very familiar with this. You have seen it several times now. The first time with respect to the request that we made for the town board to amend the comprehensive plan. That was eventually done. So let's go right to the first issue. Let's get that out of the way, and that's the issue that came up last month regarding, I think the words were bait and switch. There was an allegation that we apparently tried to pull a fast one on the board by submitting additional or a different site plan at the zoning stage than the planning board and the town board saw at the comp plan stage. This will show you that that was not true. We had submitted a revised plan before the planning board meeting, so the planning board actually saw the exact same plan that was before you last month. So to say that we had a bait and switch is just not factually correct. We can go to the next slide. So what we're talking about is townhomes, and we're talking about the property on South Linden that my client purchased from the town of Amherst. We have prepared a number of different site plans, and that was part of the problem here, and I understand the confusion. The original plan that was submitted was one of about 10 plans that were created by Carmina and Wood and my client. And the original plan that was submitted with the comp plan application was not a plan that we had intended to submit. It was submitted, quite frankly, by accident, but we did make that change prior to the planning board meeting. And that plan had 4 buildings, and I don't think you have it, Dan, but I do have a copy of it if there's any way you can put it up. I think it is. So this was the plan that was originally submitted with the application to amend the comprehensive plan. It had 4 buildings, each of which had 7 townhouse units. And you can see from this plan that the pond itself that will be needed on the site is on the opposite side of where it's now proposed. And that would be on the side closest to the homes to the west. We didn't like that. We thought it would be better to flip the pond and give a little greater green space and depth to the buffer area to the homes to the west. We also didn't like the layout at all, the 4 buildings with the 7 units each. So I know that there's been discussion about making a condition that we have fewer buildings than the 2 that are proposed, but that's not the answer. We, as I've said, we have spent hours on a number of different plans, and I'm not sure how much time you've spent on it, but to just say reduce the number of buildings isn't the answer, because this is worse than what we are proposing. So if we go back a couple of slides to the concept plan that's actually in front of the board, and you know, and I'm talking about a concept plan at a zoning stage, and and I don't even like to do that because the hearing is about a rezoning. It's not about the location of the pond or the location of the buildings. But since it came up, we'll talk about it. This is the plan that we would like to proceed with. And as you can see, it provides a bigger buffer behind the existing homes. And it has 2 buildings, one with 12 units, one with 16 units, and it has parking and garages. This is the best plan that we think that we have come up with. Now, when we get, if this is ever rezoned and we get to a site plan, maybe that changes, but maybe it doesn't. But to put a condition on and recommend to the town board that it has to change, in my opinion, is improper. And it's not good planning. Because as I said, 4 buildings doesn't make it a better plan. Next. You've seen this many times before. These are the proposed townhouse units. I want to address just a couple of the things that came up at the last meeting when I looked at the video. And by the way, just in case you don't know, it's almost impossible to hear you if you don't speak into the microphone during the session when you're actually debating. It's very difficult to hear. So what we're proposing has always been townhouses. There was a question about that at the last meeting. Was that changed? No, it was always been townhouses. It's likely to be rental, and which is we have said repeatedly in every meeting that we've ever been at. It's still a possibility they will be for sale, but it's more likely that these will be rental. There was a question about the location of the pond, and again, a site plan question. I don't know how many feet it is off the property line. We don't know that yet. We won't know until we get final engineering and final site plan. There was a question about, there was a comment about single family all around this property. Well, let's go to the map itself, if you don't mind. There is not single family all around this property. To the north, you have the Youngman Highway with a massive wall. That says North Single New York State Thruway. It's a single family. Well, it's not single family to the north. It's the expressway. We do have single family to the west. To the east, we have lampposts, and further down the line east is OTB, and then several general business parcels. To the south, we have a mix of single-family homes and single-family homes, and we went through that ad nauseum in the comp plan stage, and we showed a number of different multifamily units in the immediate vicinity. And again, I don't need to go through all that because the town board has already made the decision that the proposed townhouse rezoning to MFR5 is in accord with the comprehensive plan. So, I mean, that's really it. We're looking for you to make a recommendation to the town board to rezone the property to MFR5 to let us proceed with the development of the townhouses. I hope I addressed the questions that were raised at the last meeting. And again, I keep reminding myself and everyone else that this is a rezoning application and not a site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Palumbo. Mr. O'Rourke, any questions?
I have no questions. I have no questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. I'll stick to the rezoning. This was first requested to be rezoned as MFR 6, correct?
That's correct.
And then it changed to MFR 5.
Correct.
I didn't catch why it changed.
It changed because the request in the comprehensive plan amendment called for mixed use, and it allowed for a higher density than what we were proposing. So Mr. Ulatowski correctly notified us of that, and we reduced it down to what the density is in the MFR 5.
Okay.
That's why it was reduced.
Okay. And just to be clear, the 2 building structures is still what you intend to develop in this area. You're not open to, and I know that's not what we're talking about right now, but it sounded like that was still your intentions, just to have 2 buildings. You're
Correct.
happy with that design?
Correct. And again, not that was an easy decision. It was a result of substantial hours spent on analyzing different plans.
Okay. Thank you.
Pretty.
Where is the next nearest 16-unit building in this community?
About a quarter mile to the west.
Which building is that?
I don't remember. It's an apartment complex. I don't remember the name of it.
So when we look at this aerial, it's not anywhere in this aerial, right?
Correct. There are duplexes across the street that are in there. Couldn't tell you which ones they were. All of that information is in our application, but I don't have it in front of me.
But you would agree, and what we're being shown, there's nothing in the neighboring parcels that would be anywhere as congested as a 16-unit building that you're proposing.
There are no similar buildings immediately adjacent to us. I will give you that. But a neighborhood is not one street. A neighborhood consists of more than one street.
But you would agree, the neighborhood around this parcel is predominantly single-family residences.
No, I would not agree. I would say that the neighborhood in this area consists of OTB, lampposts, gas stations, roast beef places, duplexes, single-family apartments. Again, when you take anything within a half a mile, you get all of that. So no, I wouldn't agree. I think it's ripe for something like this because I'm not sure what your point is. Do you want us to put single-family homes next to the Youngman Highway? Nobody wants that. Who would want that? Nobody.
Marketing or review of any marketing?
Absolutely, we did marketing, which is why we're proposing townhouses, probably for rent. Those are the people that will use it. And these buildings are beautiful. This is not, subgrade housing that we're proposing.
Those are all the questions I have.
Joe?
No questions.
Carrie?
No questions.
Okay, do we have anybody from the public wishes to comment or ask questions? Come on up, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Martin. I reside at 74 South Harvest. I've sent several letters regarding the project and how it's going. And to begin, I'm a property owner. I choose to be here. I don't mean to tell anyone or dictate what they do with their own property. However, I do have to say that we chose this neighborhood. It is scenic, at least in the backdrop of the woods. It is quiet with the neighborhood. And I ask that it somewhat stay that way. If every home and every property is approximately 60 by 100. Every lot has about one home. If you look at some of those, some are uppers, lowers. At the end of the street, there might be maybe 3 apartment rental. Most of them are, in fact, brick ranches. Some are 2 stories or split ranches. To ask to have the original 28 proposal to be now 16 proposal on 6 lots, understanding the property owner bought extra road, it's just, it doesn't make sense. I referenced it before to being a complex. I'm truly fearful that when I look out my front window and my neighbors look out their backyard, that they are going to see several of these just giant units in a long row with nothing in protecting that. So what I ask of the town is we do have water issues on our street. I understand the developer will do all the testing and everything necessary to make sure that these do work with that, but all that extra water runoff and sewage going into the existing sewers, will that affect my property? I don't know. I know that they will do the test to make sure everything's to code, but what does that mean if something does happen? And I've previously stated that in letters also. As far as the tree line, it's very mature, it's tall, it's dense. It actually is a very good sound buffer. Lamppost has concert series, which I know a lot of people go to, they're becoming more popular. The airport is there, the thruway is there with the wall. It actually creates a really good dead zone. It protects a lot of sound, and I'm afraid that depending on how they orient the buildings will actually create more echo an issue. I just want to make sure that we take that into account when they do their study. Maybe you do your study. Make sure that if there is, in fact, a way reasonably to put a reasonable number of units in there, that it can actually create a sound barrier for us. If all of our houses have between 60 and 100 feet of backyard space, it would be great if we could have that there as a buffer. They want to use that as a retaining pond. I understand the scenic and the green space, that's fantastic, but do we then ask them to take care of mosquito and insect control? Because that does butt up to neighbors who do have grandkids and children there quite often. That part being said, and I guess this is probably more of a one-on-one if this does move forward. Politely, maybe we sit down in a room and ask, do we get berms? Do we get fences? Can I ask for 60 feet of mature tree line that are tall and create that buffer and that scenic backdrop by putting giant townhomes back there of 16 or 18? That's pretty significant, and already we've changed the zoning. I don't even know what the proposal is, and I disagree. I believe that the zone is directly affected by the proposal that we're doing. If he's asking for one zone and then he makes a proposal and the proposal changes later, well, what is the zoning for? Is the zoning for 28 homes? Is it for 16? Is it for 14? I'm just very confused as I spent a lot of time reading through the bicentennial plan to completely understand this. And now that I'm looking at everything changing, I just want to know that I'm understanding what we're discussing and doing. And then the last part is, I was under the impression that by no means is McIntyre going to be used. We have no sidewalks, we have children, dog walkers, pedestrians. I'm seeing that on that proposal, there was an opening to McIntyre, asking traffic to come through. I don't mean to pick pieces from everyone else, but light pollution, I did bring that one up also. You need parking lights, as long as those parking lights can be diffused and not come into my neighbors' backyards. These are just all little tiny things that I don't have answers to, and I understand we're not there yet. But if we're talking a large proposal, a really big job, we're not just talking 6 houses on 6 lots. We're also not talking 12 houses, which are little smaller duplexes on 6 lots. We're talking a really large infrastructure here. So that's not the character of the neighborhood. The neighborhood is mostly brick, it's mostly ranch. Split ranch is 2 stories. The proposal, the buildings will be beautiful, they will be current. I'm not worried about that, but I just don't know that that's what we want. And if we do, I mean, there's always rumors going on. Is the lamppost going to do this? Is that going to do that? And if that's the case, why not just take the whole area, make the whole area one giant duplex, put a park in the middle? Like, there's other things that we could really do with the space. And again, that's just hearsay because everybody says everything. But I've said my piece, and I just ask that you ask those questions and make sure that we all have a really good understanding. And I ask that of the developers out of respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in public? No? Mr. Palumbo, if you could respond to the various comments?
Thank you. Yes, we did hold a meeting with the neighbors originally, and we're certainly willing to do that again when we get to the site plan stage. That is not a problem. With respect to the issue of the trees and the buffer, those are things we can talk about. We don't have any problem with that. Mr. Militello is the developer. He is not, a large developer. He's a plumber. So he owns a few apartments in the area. He's willing to sit down at any time to discuss any of these things. And as was indicated, the water and the sewer issues, those will all be addressed at the site plan. We're required to prove that there is sufficient sewer capacity, and we will do that. And with respect to the water and the drainage, our final engineering plans will address all of that, and the engineering department will certainly be looking at all of that. Just to be clear again, it is 28 units. That's what we're proposing, no more, no less, 2 buildings, 112, 116. And in terms of the light pollution, there'll be dark sky. We will not be having any spillover into the adjacent areas behind us or adjacent to us. And again, we can address all of that with the neighbors at the site plan stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Close the hearing on that. And let's move on to item number 4, concerning the property at Worley and Spindrift Drive. Once again, Mr. Hopkins.
Good evening once again. Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant, Young Development, Inc. Also with me are Joe Young and Tom Lewis from Young Development, as well as Dan LaPetra from Carmina Wood Design. We're here this evening in connection with the request to amend an amendment of the comprehensive plan for the parcels located at 2190 and 2200 Worley Drive, which are shown here. Just to acclimate everyone, this is Worley Drive. This is an 80-foot National Grid utility corridor. Then we have Spindrift, which has offices and transitioning into multifamily. Then we would have ECC going to the east. We have a residential neighborhood. This is Bellingham, eventually transitioning all the way to transit. Next slide. This is an aerial photograph of the site, 24.9 acres in size, 640 feet of frontage on Worley Drive. We actually are adjacent to a stub street on Garfield Road, which has a right-of-way width of 60 feet. There are a wide assortment of zoning classifications and land uses in this immediate vicinity, not only shown on this aerial photograph, but if you zoomed out and showed that entire area. Next slide. I think I already have this. Next slide. So this is figure 6 of the comprehensive plan, and basically it designates what the town has determined from a general perspective to be the appropriate land use category today for this project site. And currently, this particular parcel is designated in orange, which is commercial office. What we're asking is that it be amended. Ultimately, this decision will be made by the town board to medium residential. That would accommodate the project that we're proposing. And keep in mind, you're not really looking at a project this evening, but we are proposing is 366 multifamily units, a density of slightly less than 15 acres, 15 units per acre. Next slide. This is a color version of the concept plan. Again, we want to show this for illustrative purposes only. We spent a great deal of time developing this design, and what we're showing is two-story townhome buildings with attached garages. We were discussing that in connection with the previous project, along the edges, both along Bellingham, which is zoned R3 and consists of single-family homes, and then along the west, which again is an 80-foot wide National Grid corridor with offices on part of the other side and multifamily on a portion of the other side. Then as we transition from the edges of the site into the middle, we're showing 5 4-story multifamily buildings, 2 different types. We're showing these middle ones, which do have attached garages on the side. There are examples of these throughout Amherst. Perhaps the one you know best is on the corner, near the corner of North Forest and Audubon on the north side. It was developed by Robert Savarino. And then these are bigger 4-story buildings, both on the northern and southern portions of the site. It is important to note we're also proposing what we believe will be a new standard in terms of the clubhouse out along the Whirly Drive frontage. That clubhouse, believe it or not, is nearly 8,000 square feet in size. We'll have a wide assortment of on-site amenities. And then what we've also tried to do is emphasize green space along Whirly Drive. We've done that in several ways. Number one, you can see we have, first of all, ample green space along the frontage. Second of all, we have all this, what I call park area, although it will be privately owned and privately maintained. We'll have these giant outdoor courtyard area. We're really trying to establish a new standard for amenity packages for multifamily projects in West New York. We are also showing a walking trail that'll extend along the utility corridor and end approximately here. There will be sidewalks interspersed throughout the site. We deliberately did not have that walking trail wind all the way around the site, including the eastern portion, because we knew that probably would not be particularly well received by the neighbors on Bellingham. Next slide. This is an aerial photograph, or this is a color elevation of that 49-unit, 4-story building. I'll show you where that is in a second. Next slide. The 36-unit, 4-story building. Again, this has already been built in Amherst in several locations. Next slide. Those are the 2-story, 10-unit townhome buildings. There are also 2 of those, which are 5 units as you get closer to the Whirly Drive frontage. Obviously, each of these units will come with its own garage. A young development has built this building at numerous locations in West New York. It's been very, very well received and always is fully leased. Next slide. And I think there was a few more. Did you get Dan the other slides?
Ones you provided on a flash drive.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry, Dan. I did email those to James, but they initially bounced back because it was too big. And there's only a couple more. There you go. Thank you. So if you could go to the second slide there. Actually, yeah, there you go. So if you go back one, this is just to emphasize again the comprehensive plan. So again, the comprehensive plan currently designates this site as commercial office. Those areas that are currently zoned office building and multifamily in the immediate vicinity are highlighted, OB being this color, it does include the project site. Then you see some MFR5. And basically our position is this site was rezoned by the town board more than 20 years ago in connection with 2 separate rezonings, one of 2190 and one of 2200 Whirly Drive. Again and again, the existing owner has sought and obtained approvals for this site. However, at no point in time have they ever moved forward with any of those very large office parks. The site was also subject to extensive litigation, not by my client, but by the current owner over a sanitary sewer moratorium. Ultimately, the town had to cut a check for $5 million. So there's a very, very, very lengthy history. If the town board ultimately amends the comprehensive plan as requested, that it will not be the end of the review process. It'll be more of the beginning. We would then have to come back in front of you in connection with a request to amend the zoning classification of the site from OB to MFR 6. Next slide. You can skip this. I think I got everything there. So I do want to highlight a couple of other things about the layout. Number one, as I indicated, we've deliberately scaled this up, looking at it from east to west, so that we're flanking the residential neighbors, especially to the east along Bellingham, with two-story, 10-unit buildings. One of the issues that did come up again is this Garfield Stubb Street. We had an informational meeting with the neighbors in March. We're not proposing to extend that as a public road or a private driveway onto the site. We are showing gated emergency access only connection to Limestone Drive. That is Limestone Drive is public, so we can't extend that as a public road. We will be providing low-level lighting per the requirements of the zoning code. And again, to emphasize the scale up, this particular building from the rear of the closest home on Bellingham will have a setback of 187 feet, or 2/3 of a football field. And then this one, which is a little bit closer, will have a minimum setback of 181 feet. So dramatically exceeds what's required by the code. We will be complying with on-site stringent stormwater quality and quantity standards. One of the concerns that was raised by residents when we met with them on March 11th was low water pressure in that area. We've already ordered water testing from the Erie County Water Authority. So obviously that will be a part of the project that we'll need to vet further as we come back along. Next slide. And then I want to show you where those building types are. I've already shown you these conceptual elevations. What I call the bigger building, which is the 49-unit building. We have one here and one here. Next slide. The next size building, which is located here, here, and here. And again, each of those is 36 units, 4 stories. Next slide. And then again, the townhomes all the way here and here, with the exception of the 2 that are closest to Worley Drive. Each of those will be 5 units in size versus 10 units. Next slide. So as I indicated, we had an informational meeting on March 11th. We appreciate those who attended. We thought the input was very useful. We did advise everyone who was in attendance that we would continue to keep them informed. Mr. Young did send an update email a couple of days ago informing them of the meeting this evening. And as we move forward, we'll continue to keep all of those interested property owners informed regarding the status of the project. And again, we think we've listened to their input. One of the concerns they had was, of course, adequacy of the screening along the rear of Bellingham. I do want to make it clear we will comply with the town's high impact screening requirements, which will consist of a 6-foot fence and extensive landscaping. If you visit any of the projects in Young Development's portfolio around West New York, you'd be very hard pressed to drive away from them and say they're not very, very well maintained and have very extensive landscaping. So we will follow that same standard as well as those standards set forth in the code. Next slide. And then I want to talk specifically about why are we making this request. So I think we can all agree that a lot has changed. COVID acted as a catalyst. There literally is not demand for office development on this particular site. Again, 25 acres in size. It was most recently approved by this board a couple of years ago for a couple of 100,000 square feet of office buildings, large office buildings. Those never went forward. I can't tell you exactly why, but I'm pretty confident there was no demand for those office users. This site is entirely vacant, has been cleared for more than a decade now at this point in time. And if you look at the comprehensive plan, specifically the language that goes along with figure 6, it does indicate clear as day. This is just meant to be a conceptual map. So while it currently shows office, we think it's quite clearly better from a demographic perspective, from a demand perspective, and in fact, from a community character perspective, to amend that classification to medium residential to accommodate the project that we've depicted. Next slide. And then there is text that supports that request as well. We specified that in great deal in our application, specifically exhibits number 5 and 6. But I want to highlight on a couple of the 6 objectives under the land use and development section, which is chapter 3. I'm going to talk about this bullet point, which is, policy 3.9, advance the redevelopment and revitalization of underutilized, obsolete, and vacant properties for economically viable uses. That's exactly what we're doing. I think everyone can agree it doesn't make sense for this site to remain vacant. It's been cleared. There's no wetlands. There's no protected environmental resources. So rather have it sit fallow and be designated as office for decades and decades, as it already has been, let's come up with a productive use of the project site, one that we believe is more compatible with community character and that will generate substantial tax revenues for the county, the school district, and the town for decades to come. And then finally, is that the last slide or was there one more? I do want to talk about the housing and neighborhoods goals set forth in section 8 of the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan, and you've heard me say this again, talks about the fact that historically the town of Amherst was a suburban bedroom community. That's not necessarily the case anymore as a result of changing demographics, younger people that either can't afford homes or don't want homes, and of course the great growth in the number of elderly individuals. We have more and more demand for townhomes, apartments, other what I call non-traditional forms of residential development, not simply single-family homes on individual lots. We will be accommodating that demand as a result of this project. It's also important to note that within that section of the comprehensive plan, it does say that higher density housing should be located to complement established residential areas through appropriate standards for location and design. We're trying to accommodate that objective. Again, ample green space, high impact screening, 2-story buildings next to residential neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. So we think we've fulfilled those objectives. Ultimately, this will be a decision that's made by the town board. We do ask that you would make a positive recommendation to the town board. We would also ask, based on the extensive environmental documentation that we've submitted to date, that you would recommend issuance of a negative declaration. And I want to touch finally on the last point, which was I did have the opportunity to attend the work session. And for the first time, I heard there was some discussion about maybe incorporating a park or some recreational resources or maybe some mixed use. Obviously, we're not in a position this evening that we can accommodate those requests. But if you want to include a request that we evaluate that, we would. I would only note along the Worley Drive frontage, I don't see there being a lot of demand for retail space in that area. However, it was a very, very small amount, or if the town was interested in accepting ownership of a portion of the site as a pocket park, we welcome those discussions. It's just we're not in a position this evening that we can reply. And again, the layout that we've shown you, again, reflects the deliberate effort to incorporate the goals and objectives in the comprehensive plan and the input we received, but it's not meant to be a literal layout of the project site. If and when we get through the comp plan amendment process, the rezoning process, we'll come back in front of you again with fully engineered plans. We will hold a public hearing on a request for site plan approval. So we'll have those discussions again. If there are any questions, either myself, Mr. Young, Mr. Lewis, or Mr. LaPetria would welcome the opportunity to address them. And I've reached my time limit as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Mr. O'Rourke, any questions?
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the discussion you heard about neighborhood amenities, because something of this scope or this size is certainly would seem an appropriate place. A lot of the successful, you referenced other comparable projects in the last couple of years in the town, and many of them have reached out with the extras, bringing that to the neighborhood that not only your project can take advantage of, but others. And I just want to make sure that that comment is taken back to
It will be.
to the developer. And the other thing is, one of the other needs that's come up in a lot of the approvals that have taken place recently have included an affordable housing element. Is there any discussion at this early?
No, yeah, so as you know, Mr. O'Rourke, the IDA has adopted a policy, a very good policy from my perspective, to encourage what they call workforce housing. And absolutely, our goal would be to participate in that program. I have had very preliminary conversations with Dave Benjoya, the executive director, And in fact, this project, more than any other project that's been proposed in Amherst, if we're eligible and if we reach that consensus, which we believe we will, given that it's 366 units, you're literally looking at 71 workforce housing units. That there is ample demand. We can leave this building this evening, walk up and down Main Street and see people. They live in Amherst, they're successful in Amherst, but they simply can't afford to live in Amherst. So absolutely, we want to do that. As part of that process, we've also had preliminary discussions with Supervisor Culpa. He's interested in there being a recreational amenity as well, possibly either on-site or off-site. And one of the actual possibilities he mentioned was the ECC North Campus. So again, we're open to all of those discussions as we move forward.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Davis, any questions? Brittany?
So is the applicant considered incorporating a commercial space, an eatery, or?
Well, again, we only heard about that this evening, so we certainly will. My concern is about demand, but a point has been made. Again, you'll be bringing a lot of new residents here. There are not really any nearby neighborhood amenities on that side of Worley Drive, so we'll certainly take into consideration. We just can't answer it tonight. It would not be that hard to incorporate some type of smaller mixed use along Worley Drive, so you have our assurance we'll take a look at it.
So this is like 360 units?
366 units.
But nearly the entire side of the eastern portion of this parcel is all single family, is it not?
Yeah, so Bellingham is single-family homes on individual lots, absolutely. And again, that's why we're showing 55 feet of green space and 2-story townhome buildings exclusively along that portion of the site.
360 unit.
Well, yeah, because the higher density's in the middle, as I indicated, with a minimum setback of 181 feet. And that's deliberate. We could have said, like, hey, let's build more 3-story buildings. We think this actually makes sense. And while it's hard to see at this scale, but Joe has the full size, or you see the full-size copy, there is a ton, acres of green space out along Worley Drive. And this site would really, really look nice. So do we have some flexibility moving forward? Absolutely. And we'll engage in those discussions.
That's all I have.
Joe?
No additional questions.
Carrie?
No questions.
Okay, do we have anybody from the general public that wishes to speak or ask questions? Whoever wants to speak, if you could line up, please, so we know that you want to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Share. That's fine. Okay.
Hello, my name is Bruce Wisbaum. I'm president and CEO of Windsong Place Apartments. I'm here representing approximately our 500 residents at our community. I am the neighborhood representative for the Windsong Place Apartments in that western side of the parcel.
Sir, did you list your own address?
Windsong is on Spring Meadow. It's 25 Spring Meadow Drive. They're all along Spindrift, also on the other side of the street.
Thank you.
Windsong is zoned MFR 5. We built 308 units on 30.8 acres, which works out to about 10 units per acre. In addition, the majority of our buildings are 2-story with a few 2.5-story buildings. We have a lot of green space. Our apartments are surrounded by commercial zone land. There are no other residential properties that abut our property. For the most part, there are large buffer areas and/or heavily landscaped berms separating our buildings from the neighboring buildings. Not sure the reason why, but our residents very often complain about low water pressure and sewer backups. To try and minimize these complaints and lower water consumption, we have replaced all of our toilets, approximately 560, to the lowest reasonable flush per gallon, and also replaced all our shower heads and faucets to water saver units. In addition, we installed separate water meters in every unit. Although the complaints have gone down, we still do get many complaints about low water pressure. It should be noted our maintenance staff also get many calls for sewer backups. Not sure if it has to do with the sewer capacity resident misuse, or original construction issues. But it should be mentioned that this parcel was under an original 50-year sewer moratorium. Research definitely needs to be done to look at what's a reasonable build-out to not exceed current sewer capacity. The change to the Amherst master plan requesting this 25-acre parcel be changed from office to MFR 6 should be denied for many reasons. The proposed density and massive size and height of the buildings does not fit in this residential neighborhood. The adjacent homes on Bellingham are mainly one-story ranch homes, while even the adjacent office buildings are one-story. The proposed setback from the homes is 55 feet. The apartment windows and balconies will be extremely close and will allow the homeowners no privacy. The sheer height of these proposed buildings will totally overshadow these ranch homes and not fit in the residential ambiance of the current neighborhood. For comparison purposes, the Windsong zoning is MFR 5. They are requesting MFR 6. The difference based on the proposal are substantial, almost 50% more units per acre, 4-story versus 2-story. Also many more parking spaces and less green space per acre. Before the planning board even considers any recommendations regarding changes to the master plan, each one of you should visit Young Development's current Midtown 360-unit apartment community on Transit near Genesee Street, across from the Hillview Elementary School. These buildings are massive, very little green space, lots of blacktop and parking spaces, buildings very close together, and minimal berms and buffer areas between neighboring properties. After viewing this development, ask yourself, is this what should be built in the residential neighborhood with ranch homes and some one-story office buildings? Sean mentioned, take a look at any of their buildings. I encourage you to go look at the buildings on Midtown. There's almost no green space, lots of parking. It just is not appropriate. It should be noted that I had a prior understanding with AQuest 10 or 15 years ago. I agreed, to the best of my recollection, to support their rezoning to request to rezone the approximate 60-foot wide residential parcel adjacent to the Niagara Mohawk right-of-way from residential to office, as long as the main parcel remained office or lower density residential, and as long as they put up 5 to 6 foot berms with extensive landscaping along my nearby property line. Sean refers to extensive landscaping. The trees are about he doesn't have a full landscape plan now, but usually that means they put up 6-foot evergreen trees and 2-inch caliper trees. I don't call those extensive. He hasn't shown the picture, but there's also a picture that shows the supposedly the winter view, and he shows trees on that rendering that are approximately 30 years old. They're nowhere near what they're going to look like in the first 5 years of construction. Finally, it appears they are suggesting this will be a 36-month construction period. This will mean 36 months of construction-related noise, dust, and traffic. The wind blows west. All the debris, the dust, and the dirt, and the noise will be blowing towards those homes on Bellingham. In addition, office use will probably mean very limited site activity on weekends and weekdays after 5 p.m., while high-density multifamily land use will mean much more activity 24/7. Also, as mentioned previously, there is a major water pressure and sewer capacity issue. Allowing a change from office to high-density residential use with 366 proposed apartments will only make this situation worse. Not sure if the board is aware of it or if it's true, but I was informed by a resident in Bellingham that in the 1970s, this parcel was originally zoned R3 for residential homes, similar to what Bellingham and surrounding neighborhoods. Hopefully the planning board will agree the master plan zoning for office buildings will not be changed based on their current proposal. Also, just a couple other things. Sean mentioned that there was a meeting held on March 11th for all the neighbors within 500 or 600 feet. I was not invited. Extensive landscaping, he mentions, at some of their communities. As I mentioned earlier, the 360-unit Midtown apartments, from my viewpoint, certainly does not have extensive landscaping. I didn't see any berms. I didn't see any fences. Maybe I missed it, but I've driven through several times. He talks about they're going to be paying substantial taxes. My understanding is, from reading the Buffalo News, that they're also considering going to the ECIDA. Usually when someone or the Amherst IDA, usually when they go to the IDA, they're looking for reduced taxes, not substantial taxes. So that should also be taken a look at and questioned. That's pretty much all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wisbaum. Okay, who's next? Please come up.
Ann Sahana, Ann Sahana, 281 Bellingham Drive. I received a letter from Young Development to attend this meeting. Sadly, I got my dates mixed up, but I wasn't concerned because the address said 2190 and 2200. So I thought it was just a development that was taking place on the east of the property. It's actually 2220 Worley, and Mr. Hopkins stated that this was, this property is west, ECC is west of the property. He got it mixed up. So I didn't get a call back from Young Development, and that was disappointing. A comprehensive plan, the goal is to maximize the space, to protect green space, to use the space in the best way possible that benefits the community, and that includes the residents and businesses. In 1975, the comprehensive plan said R3. Mr. Samato had, and this is decades ago when I saw this plan, maybe 20 houses. The lots were big and the backyards were big. It got changed to office building and was sold to Mr. Huntress from Aquest. And in April 2000, we saw the site plan. He was not really very considerate of the neighbors. His plan was to put a parking lot 10 feet behind our property line. Our properties are not deep, so we're looking at a parking lot very close to our homes. So we gathered a neighborhood, and then we discovered the 50-year sewer tap-in restriction. Mr. Huntress, Aquist, claims that they didn't know about the 50-year sewer tap-in restriction. One developer I spoke to said, and everyone knew about the moratorium. Years passed. In March of 2006, the current town board rescinded the waiver request to the EPA. July 2006, Mr. Huntress tried to clear cut the property. Long story short, Army Corps was very upset. Mr. Steve Mativier told me, I don't understand, why did he do that? He was 3 weeks away from getting the sewer tap-in waiver. Aquest, the Army Corps rescinded the permit, DEC rescinded the permit. Mr. Huntress self-inflicted what happened to him. He claimed his constitutional rights were violated. He sued the town. I thought it was $3 million, $4 million. I hear it's $5 million. I was, of all irony, asked to be a witness on his behalf. On July 1st, 2006, he violated the Clean Water Act. He plowed through, disrupted the soil. The EPA told him that he needed to mitigate what he did, replant the trees. And if he didn't take care of all the damage that he caused, it would be $11,000 per day fine. Nothing came of it. In the meantime, the Army Corps gave up. May I continue to tell you this?
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up. But if you could state your final statements, that'll be fine. Because I got 4 other people waiting behind you.
He drained the property. He cut down trees. He made the wetlands go away. What ended up happening to our houses, trees fell down on our property because the other trees weren't there. Wind came through. On the other side of Bellingham, houses were damaged. Insurance was pulled because of so much damage. Increased water issues in the basement, increased rodents. And after enduring all of this, now he has looking at selling it to another individual, high density. The feeder stream on the northwest side of the property. Where's all this water going to go? During certain times of the year, it looks like a lake. Where's the water going to go?
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to have to ask you to stop now. Thank you. I know, but we also have rules here, and I got people also waiting to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Tom Sahina, 281 Bellingham Drive. My house is probably about the 3rd lot on the Bellingham side there. You can see this complete mischaracterization of the what he's going to build out here, and showing the 181 feet for the larger buildings. He's going to, the smaller townhouses, he calls them, right next to, which is still 2 stories plus a roof, are going to be looking right over into our property. The space that he left there is 50 feet. The water that sets on that property in the spring when the wind comes up, we actually have waves coming towards the back of our property. That's how much the water extends to over 200 feet into that property. So to say that there's no wetlands there, I don't understand that characterization, but apparently it has to do with soil. Anyways, the site plan calls for 366 units, 4-story buildings, large buildings immediately adjacent to the existing homes, 0 green space. According to him, he says this is green space, but you can see there's buildings on almost all of those spots he calls green space. There's no water retention, no information about traffic problems that will cause for having 366 new units when there are 360 units just 3 miles down the road, which Mr. Wisbaum just explained to you, and another property that just went up behind M&T Bank, which has 6 or 7 stories. There's an enormous amount. So this is the density is just way too high. This is way too high. And so I would suggest that before you decide about whether you want to rezone this, thinking about all the things that this is going to affect the neighborhood right next door to it, you should just get a more realistic site plan than this type of density for this property, how close it is to the existing properties that are there. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Good afternoon. Adam Carl, 305 Bellingham Drive. I also agree with several of the other sentiments that the previous presenters have put towards. Water pressure and sewage issues in the neighborhood are common. I'm also a volunteer fireman for the local fire department. A couple years ago, we had to have tankers come in to fight a fire because we don't have enough water pressure in the hydrants. I did share some pictures with that in an email that I sent to the person that receives the emails for these types of things. I guess to just sum it up real quick, I know there's more people behind me, the scale, density, and height of these buildings do not fit in the character of the neighborhood that's going on. There's 366 units, almost probably now 1,000 more people that are going to be traversing this area, driving probably through our neighborhood to cut through to get to their neighborhood, causing all types of additional issues, stressing local infrastructure, police, fire, EMS. It's additional density that is just too much for the site. It's hard to look right now. I know like that property is not mine, not any of the other presenters. You look out the backyard, there's a clear field. Now there's going to be 4-story apartment buildings. Recent rezoning in the area on George Carl Boulevard, they rezoned it from R3 to commercial. There was a 100-foot green space deed restriction and a 2-story height restriction. I guess I'm saying is I'm not naive knowing this is a valuable property, that someone's going to build something on it. We just like it to be brought back in scale to maybe match the density and character of the rest of the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Good evening. My name is Susan Roman. I live at 231 Bellingham. I'm the house on the corner of Garfield and Bellingham. I agree with everything everybody has said so far, so to keep it short, I'll just add what might be a little different. When I went to the meeting last month, I was very impressed with Joe Young, what he had to say, what he had to show us. And even as an older folk, I like to keep an open mind, and you call it progress. So I made a point to study and go see the apartments on Cloverleaf and Transit, and I was horrified. Are they beautiful? Yeah, they're a little close and very dense as well. But I was shocked because my mind was not accurately envisioning what a 4-story apartment building would look like. And while this shows those 4-story buildings being in a different direction, I don't even know if we're going to see a sunset or see the sky again. Any other apartment building that's across the field and way down, I think they may be 2 stories. They're much, much lower. The whole general area doesn't have anything high like that. It was overwhelming. And like I said, I tried to keep an open mind about it, but the more I thought about it and looked into it, we have all the flooding. I have a fence by my property. I don't know what we would do about that, but my yard is fenced in. My 6-foot fence isn't going to do anything to help me not see a 2-story and 4-story buildings. And every morning when I get up 50 feet out my door, another 50 feet from there, I'll be experiencing the lifestyle and busyness of 1,000 more people with 839 parking spaces of cars constantly coming, going, on, off, all the lighting. And of course, as everybody says, our water pressure leaves a lot to be desired. But I heartfelt ask you, please, not to cause any harm for these people who are looking for progress, but just to be a little more sensitive and understanding that while we know something has to happen there, I don't think any of you or anybody, I don't think he, the developer, would want this in his backyard. We know there'll be something, but at least keeping it commercial, no matter how big it is or what it is, it's generally limited use, whether it's 8 in the morning till 2 in the morning, maybe not weekends. This will be a constant, everyday inconvenience and heartache. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jillian Lenhard. I live at 198 Bellingham. That's actually my mom. I bought my house 10 years ago on Bellingham, and since then I've actually convinced my mother and my brother to move up from Long Island and live on our street. So our entire neighborhood is pretty close-knit. I know for Adam over there, his whole family as well lives in our loop. We're all raising our kids. We're all raising our families there. That's kind of just what our little community has become. I also work on Limestone. I own a private practice and I rent commercial space on Limestone. So when you're in this area, you look at the streets. We're only in Maine. They're busier streets, but we kind of live in like a little pocket that's not really, it's not like being on Main or Worley. Even Limestone, the commercial apartments, the commercial offices, they're 1-story. They're a little busy during the day, but it's quiet. We're in quiet areas. It's a very like quaint and quiet neighborhood. So most of us are raising kids. I have a 4.5-year-old and a 7-year-old. Pretty much every other house has kids that get picked up, go to Forest Elementary. Our street is already used as a cut through. We're not a dead end, so we link, even though we're a loop, we link up with Main and Worley. So there are frequently cars going through and blowing stop signs. I will not allow my children to play in the street. That being said, the access street to Limestone, which I work on, I'm very aware of, it's for emergency use only. I get that. If someone is not coming from Young's to get into the Worley access, they're going to go down our street if they're coming from Sheridan or doing the cut-through streets. So, with 800 something parking spaces and 1,000 people, we're going to become a bigger cut-through than we already are. So, I just wanted to consider this and the climate that our neighborhood is and what this could do to us. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Cool entrance music, I guess, there. Margaret Drzwicki on behalf of Rupp Falls Graph, on behalf of Winsong Place Associates LP. Won't take up much more of your time. I wanted to echo some of the concerns that the residents already raised about density. So while we understand that today before you is only the amendment to the comprehensive plan, we just hope that in your consideration of this amendment request, you also take into consideration the steps along the way, which is the next step would be the rezoning to this MFR 6 district, which we argue is not consistent with the surrounding neighborhood, the R3, and then the nearest higher density is MFR 5, which is owned and operated by Winsong Place Apartments Associates, excuse me. So our true concern is the density, as the residents have already raised, and we just hope you take that into consideration when you make your recommendation to the town board. These density-related concerns include the sewer infrastructure, the water pressure, and the traffic, which I know will be considered by the town at a later date, but putting that into perspective now for the benefit of the project overall. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay, in that case, Mr. Hopkins, if you could address some of the concerns. And obviously, we're at a request to amend the bicentennial comprehensive plans to make it clear that the request for rezoning, I understand they're going to request it to MFR 6, but that request will be dealt with at a later time. That's the next step after this. And Mr. Hopkins, if you could, you did explain it once, but if you could touch again upon.
I'll start with that in terms of the process. Tonight, we're asking to consider making a recommendation, the key word being recommendation to the town board, on the pending request to amend the bicentennial comprehensive plan to change the designation only in one figure, figure 6, from commercial office to medium residential. If and when the town board holds the public hearing and approves that, then we have to file a rezoning application. We're envisioning MFR 6. There is absolutely no rezoning application filed as of today. That would come back in front of you again for another recommendation to the town board. The town board would ultimately hold a public hearing and then issue a decision in its legislative capacity. If we get through that process, then after that, we would file a site plan application. It would include fully engineered plans, all of the required supports, reports, and studies. We come back in front of you for an additional public hearing. So at the very least, we have 2 additional public hearings in front of you, 2 additional public hearings, or 2 public hearings in front of the town board, as well as other meetings. So we're very, very early in the process. And again, that's why I want to emphasize this is not meant to be a literal final site plan. With all that being said, I want to mostly respond to the comments that were made by Mr. Wisbaum. And he indicated that he represents, I think he said 500 individuals. I want to make it clear, I believe what he's referencing is his tenants. And in reality, in terms of this project and why, from my perspective, he's most likely against it, is he owns an adjacent multifamily project, which is fine. He's very successful. He has an excellent track record in Amherst. And in fact, I really don't think this will compete with him. It's a different product. It's a different era. So I want to make that clear. I think that's about competition. Obviously, any type of land use decision, whether it's a comp plan amendment, a rezoning, a site plan, a variances, cannot be based on economic competition. The case law on that is very, very clear. On the other hand, I also want to emphasize there is an 80-foot wide utility corridor that buffers our site from his site. We cannot touch that. We are not touching it. We're not proposing any improvements whatsoever in that utility corridor. Is our project higher density than his? Absolutely. It's a lot different than it was in the late 1990s in terms of costs. These units will cost literally $300,000 per unit, whereas Mr. Wisbaum, fortunate for him, back then was probably able to build those units for less than $100,000 per unit. Economic times have changed. The lending environment has changed. Mr. Wisbaum's sitting in a very good position, I'm sure, in terms of those variables. We have to deal with the variables in 2025 and going forward. I do also want to address the concerns or the comments that have been brought up by the neighbors on Bellingham. They've been at this, and Anna, her husband, they've been at this for decades. In many instances, they've not been treated particularly well by the existing property owner. Mr. Young and Mr. Lewis, as part of our process that started out with that informational meeting in March, we want to change that. So we're early in the process. We will meet with them. We'll discuss the issues they brought up, landscaping, setbacks, density, height of buildings, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Young would gladly provide each and every resident who's here this evening with a copy of his business card. It looks like it would be a great idea to hold another informational meeting with residents before we proceed to the town board. We will do that. So we have to work out some of these details. We heard again, based during the work session, some comments about maybe some public parkland, some mixed use. We're open to all of those ideas. And the good thing is we're early in the process. It gets more and more difficult as you proceed to do that after you've paid engineers to come up with stormwater plans, sewer plans, et cetera, et cetera. We're aware of both environmental concerns that have been raised primarily, sanitary sewer capacity, We do have downstream sanitary sewer capacity results back, obtained from TechSmith during wet weather conditions. The downstream sewer capacity analysis report will be prepared and submitted. We'll need approval from the engineering department and ultimately approval from the DEC. We have also heard the concerns about water pressure, and I do probably agree with Mr. Wisbaum said in terms of his project. We'll have to look at that. We're going to have to confirm that we have adequate water pressure for domestic use and firefighting use. If we have to implement some water saving improvements on the site, we will certainly do so. In terms of drainage, Ann and her husband are correct. There is standing water on the site in many instances, especially in the spring. The reason for that is bedrock is near the surface, and there is absolutely no stormwater management system whatsoever on the site. There never has been. We'll be changing that. We'll be implementing a stormwater management system, stormwater quality, injection wells, thereby ensuring that we comply with the standards. Again, retaining a 100-year storm event on site. If there's any drainage that currently is conveyed onto this site from off-site properties, our project engineer, Carmina Wood Design, needs to consider that as well. So there's a whole host of issues that we'll need to address going forward. We're well aware of those. We'll continue to engage in discussions with the nearby property owners. I also want to note we did meet separately with Mr. Wisbaum during March. We thought he was obviously a very important stakeholder, and he still is. He owns the project right here, and obviously we believe his concerns are different from the residential neighborhood to the east. So we welcome additional discussions with Mr. Wisbaum and his council. We do believe this evening, from an advisory perspective only, that in your position to make a recommendation to the town board. You want to add some language for considerations, again, in terms of parkland, maybe some mixed use, that's okay. And then again, we'll take all that into consideration as we go forward. And if and when the town board does elect to amend the comprehensive plan, we'll come back in front of you once again in connection with a request for rezoning. If there was any additional input that I failed to address, please remind me and I'll make sure I do.
Thank you. Okay. Close down here at this point. Oh, we don't have a back and forth at this point here. I had to enforce the rules against the nice lady behind you. I have to keep it consistent, sir. There's going to be several hearings coming up, including one in front of the town board. We're advisory only on this. You'll be able to address your concerns then. Understood, but that's the next step. Thank you, sir. Close the hearing. We ready? Okay, now for the voting here, let's start with item number 1, which was 4780 Sheridan Drive. This is the secret determination. Is there a proposal?
I'll second.
We have move Mr. O'Rourke, second Carrie. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Gill? I'm sorry, Khan?
Yes.
Ed Murphy? Yes. Raphael?
Yes.
O'Rourke? Yes.
Passes 6-0. Okay, moving on to item number 2, 1789 Dodge Road. This is a secret determination as well. Is there a proposal?
I'll second.
Mr. O'Rourke moves to approve the neg deck, seconded by Carrie. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Davis? Yes. Khan?
Yes.
O'Rourke? No. Raphael?
No.
That's passes 4-2. What did you want to say? Yeah, well, we got 2 no votes. We have 4, it passes 4-2, but we should put the 2 on the record. Go ahead, Brittany.
My position just remains that there wasn't sufficient evidence that the lighting concerns have been addressed such that they don't pose an environmental concern to the neighboring properties. And again, I'm concerned about the wildlife. So
Thank-
for those reasons, I vote no.
Thank you, Brittany. Joe, did you want to list her?
I do not.
Okay. Passes 4-2. All right, moving on to item number 3, the various South Linden Road. This, again, is advisory to the town board. Request the change from R3 to MFR5. We do have conditions on this, or do we? Does anybody want to make a proposal with conditions?
Well, the conditions that were
We discuss them.
discussed to address the form concerns of the development were that the principal structures be limited to 4 to 6 units per structure on the property, and that the form of the proposed structures be consistent with the scale of adjacent single-family homes and be provided with sloped roofs.
Has everybody here heard the proposed conditions with request to this recommendation to whether or not to request a rezone?
Can you clarify for me, would any approval that came out of our recommendation be predicated on those being included, or would those simply be additional recommendations?
It's all a recommendation, but you can recommend to the town board that they make that a condition of their approval.
Understand, okay. That answers my question, thank you.
Okay. Again, has everybody understood the proposed conditions? Does anyone have a proposal with or without the conditions?
I'm going to move for approval for now without the conditions, but that doesn't mean I won't accept them.
Okay.
If somebody else wants to amend that.
Let's first take, first, does anyone second Mr. O'Rourke's proposal? He is asking his proposal is to approve the recommendation to rezone without conditions. Is there a second? Hearing none. Is there any other proposal? Okay. Mr. Davis, you're proposing, just to articulate it again so everybody understands, you would recommend to rezone with the 2 conditions that were articulated by Scott? Okay. We have a proposal. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Mr. O'Rourke seconds. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Davis? Yes. Khan?
Yes.
O'Rourke?
Yes.
Converti? Bell? Raphael?
Yes. It passes 5-1. Again, that's a recommendation of the town board. All right. Finally, last item, item number 4, Worley Drive and Spindrift. This is a recommendation to the town board to amend the bicentennial comprehensive plan. It's all this is, to go from commercial office to medium residential. The articulated proposal, if it's agreed, if this is what's voted on and approved, would be resolved that the planning board recommends, this is just what's in the specific language, recommends to the town board in accordance with the New York State law, section 272A, subsection 4, that the request to amend the bicentennial comprehensive plan be approved with the inclusion of commercial, mixed use and recreation, open space, and greenway land uses on the subject parcel. With that in mind, is there a proposal? By the way, do we have seeker on this first?
No.
Somebody mentioned it, but.
Isn't that the next step?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay. Going back to what I just said, does anyone have a proposal? Motion to approve. Mr. Davis moves to approve it with the condition as stated. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Raphael. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Davis? Yes. Khan?
Yes.
O'Rourke?
Yes.
Converti? Bell? Raphael?
Yes.
Passes 5-1. Okay, has everybody, that's the issues. Has everybody had a chance to review the April minutes?
Yes.
No, go.
Is there a motion to approve the April minutes?
I would suggest one change. I believe council was properly identified as Jennifer Early. Her name is actually Jennifer Early.
It's true.
So with that change, I would second.
No, you go first. You're going
Then
first?
I would move to approve with that change.
And now, second.
We have a motion to approve with the change, the correct spelling of Ms. Hurley's name. Do I hear a second?
Me.
Carrie seconds it. Roll call, please.
Shamil,
Abstain.
Davis,
Yes.
Khan,
Yes.
O'Rourke,
Yes.
Penberthy. Yes. Raphael.
Abstain?
Passes 4-0. I don't believe there's a director's report, right? Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn to next month?
I'll move.
Brittany moves and Carrie seconds. Roll call, please.
Shamil,
Yes.
Davis, Khan,
Yes.
O'Rourke. Yes. Penberthy. Yes. Raphael.
Yes.
Passes 6-0. Thank you, everybody.